Hello everybody, today it's the Tokina 11-16 versus the Canon 10-22. Alright, hello everybody, and today we are comparing the Tokina 11-16 f2.8DX version 2 lens to the Canon EFS 10-22mm USM lens. Now both of these lenses are popular choices as ultra-wide angle lenses for crop-censored DSLRs. Now taking a look at the build of these two lenses, you can notice that there isn't quite much of a difference in terms of size between these two lenses. So these two lenses are quite identically sized. They even have the same 77mm front filter thread, which is good. It's a very common filter thread size to have. So both of these are well constructed lenses. Both these lenses are constructed from plastic. They both have metal mounts, but they are very well built. The build quality feels very decent. However, on the Tokina, the AF to MF switching clutch is not very well built. It doesn't feel very solid and it can get very clunky at times. Now apart from that, the Tokina 11-16 is also significantly heavier than the Canon 10-22. The Canon 10-22 is actually a pretty light lens, and the 11-16 has a bit of heft to it. Now on the Tokina, both the zoom and focusing rings are decently sized, whereas on the Canon, we have this big fat zoom ring and a very narrow focusing ring. Now the front element of both lenses do shift around as you are zooming in and out. However, the movement for both of these lenses is within the barrel of the lens, so the physical length of the lens does not change. And both of these lenses have internal focusing, so when you are autofocusing, the front element does not move at all. Now when it comes to AF performance, the Canon is powered by a USM ultrasonic motor, whereby the Tokina is powered by a traditional micro motor. So the autofocus on the Canon is going to be faster and quieter, whereby the Tokina, powered by the micro motor, apart from being slower, it's also going to be noisier. So I'm about to show you the noise the Tokina makes when it is autofocusing. And here's what the Canon sounds like. So apart from the swifter autofocus, the Canon also has full-time manual focus, so you can override the focus manually even when it is switched to AF mode. Now when you're comparing the widest ends of these two lenses, the Canon is actually 1mm wider than the Tokina. Now because these are ultra-wide angle lenses, so how far it goes into the wide end is going to matter more than how far it can go into the tele end. So 1mm may not sound like much, but as we compare a 10mm shot from the 10-22 and an 11mm shot from the Tokina, you can see that you'll be able to fit that little bit more into your frame, although it's just a 1mm difference. And in terms of range, the Canon is definitely the winner here, being able to go from 10mm to 22mm, whereby the Tokina only goes from 11 to 16mm. Now the Tokina also wins big on maximum aperture here because it has a maximum aperture of f2.8, whereby on the Canon, the maximum aperture is f3.5 at the widest end. The f2.8 maximum aperture on the Tokina is also constant throughout the entire zoom range, whereas on the Canon, it's quite disappointing because you go from f3.5 to f4.5 as you go through the zoom range. Now, image quality. When we're comparing sharpness at wider apertures, in this case, we've set both lenses to the maximum aperture of the 10-22, which is f3.5. You can see that the Tokina is slightly sharper than the Canon in the center and also at the edges. Now, the difference is very mild, but it's definitely noticeable. And at small apertures, that's around f5.6, I would say that both the lenses are equally sharp in the center. However, at the extreme edges, the Tokina is definitely sharper than the Canon. Now, the Tokina shows more barrel distortion than the Canon at the widest end. However, the Canon has extremely heavy vignetting at wider apertures, which the Tokina doesn't seem to suffer from. Even at f2.8, only light vignetting is noticeable on the Tokina. Now, comparing the price of these two lenses. Now, as of the time this video was filmed, the Tokina currently goes for $449 on B&H, whereas the Canon is a $599 on B&H. So if you're going for the Canon, you're going to have to pay just over $100 more than the Tokina. So now I'm going to list down the pros and cons of these two lenses. Now the pros of the Canon 10-22 is it has better autofocus, it has full-time manual focus, it has low distortion, and it's 1mm wider than the Tokina apart from having a wider range. However, the cons of the Canon would be it has a variable maximum aperture, and it also has a relatively small maximum aperture compared to the Tokina. It has poorer overall sharpness compared to the Tokina as well, and it has heavy vignetting at wide apertures. And it is also relatively expensive. Now, the pros of the Tokina would be that it has a wider maximum aperture, it has a constant f2.8 aperture throughout the entire zoom range, it has better overall sharpness, it has less vignetting, and it is also cheaper compared to the Canon. However, there are cons on the Tokina as well. Compared to the Canon, it has relatively poor AF performance, it doesn't have full-time manual focus, it has higher distortion at the widest end compared to the Canon, it's not as wide as the Canon, and the range is not so wide compared to the Canon as well. So to summarize, the Canon wins on autofocus, distortion, and range. However, the Tokina would win on the maximum aperture, the constant aperture, the image quality, and also the price. Now personally, I'm actually leaning more towards this, the Tokina 11-16, because apart from having a better maximum aperture of f2.8, it also has better overall image quality compared to the Canon, and it's also relatively the cheaper option, which makes this a more value for money choice. So that sums up my comparison of the Tokina 11-16 versus the Canon 10-22. If you have any questions, any comments, just leave them in the comment section below. That's pretty much it for today, everybody. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Instagram at ZaroProductions, and you can also like my page on Facebook at facebook.com/ZaroProductions. And you can also join my community group on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/ZaroProductions. So that's pretty much it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.